Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Hello, Maverick family. We have so much to share with you. Stacked program tonight. We have an exclusive interview with Mira Tirada, the head of the Foundation to Battle Injustice, a Russian organization. Mira is a controversial figure who has been making headlines internationally, and she will share her personal story and also talk about the work she is doing right now, both on the justice front, which involves legal advocacy, and in other areas as well, including with the BRICS Journalists Association. So we'll talk to Mira later in the broadcast, but there is so much news going on today. The big market crash that everyone has been talking about. Is this a prelude to a massive global recession or worse? I'm going to suggest that maybe it's an opportunity, and I'll explain why later in the broadcast. Also, what is Iran doing? Are they going to retaliate? Where is the revenge they've spoken of? Everyone is waiting, watching, and yet still nothing. But I have a feeling there's something coming. In fact, Antony Blinken, Secretary of State, has reportedly told leaders of the G7 countries that an attack from Iran is imminent, could happen within the next day. Is that true? I guess only time will tell. We have Kamala Harris talking about going woke, staying woke. They need to be woke. We have Donald Trump accepting a gift of a Rolex and a Cybertruck from an online streamer who interviewed him. And then he makes reference to a fake photo from the attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania. We'll explain what that's about too. So we have, that and a whole lot more coming up right here on the Maverick News Channel. So don't go away, folks, because it is going to be one heck of a ride tonight. That much I guarantee.
He's a fighter. He's a survivor. President Trump, defiant, strong. He is determined to make America great again. Pay tribute to the 45th President of the United States with this collectible t-shirt from the Maverick News Memorable Moments collection. Even a would-be assassin's bullet could not stop him. Instead, he emerged with his fist in the air ready to fight for freedom. Get your Trump Fighting for Freedom t-shirt with any donation of $30 or more to Maverick News. There are two iconic artistic designs to choose from, but there is only one way to get these. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Support free speech, free media. Support Maverick News. Call 1-866-248-1490 or order online at supergeeks.tv.
Okay, so let's go straight to this situation in the Middle East. Tonight, Reuters news service is reporting that U.S. personnel have been wounded in an attack against a U.S. base in Iraq. Let me show you, bring it up here. This is breaking news and is headlined as an exclusive with Reuters. It says at least 5 U.S. personnel were injured in an attack against a military base in Iraq on Monday. That would be today. U.S. officials told Reuters as the Middle East braced for a possible new wave of attacks by Iran and its allies following last week's killing of senior members of militant groups Hamas and Hezbollah. 2 rockets were fired at al-Assad Air Base in western Iraq, 2 Iraqi security sources said. One Iraqi security source said the rockets fell inside the base. It was unclear whether the attack was linked to threats by Iran to retaliate over the killings. On Wednesday, Iran said the U.S. bears responsibility in the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran because of its support for Israel. The U.S. officials who spoke to Reuters on condition of anonymity said one of the wounded Americans was seriously injured. The casualty count was based on initial reports, which could still change, they said. Base personnel are conducting a post-attack damage assessment, one of the officials added. Last week, the U.S. carried out a strike in Iran against individuals U.S. officials said were militants getting ready to launch drones and posed a threat to U.S. and coalition forces. The U.S. has been watching to see if Iran would make good on its vow to respond to the killing of Haniyeh 2 days ago in Tehran, one in a series of killings of senior figures in the Palestinian militant group as the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza rages. The Pentagon said it will deploy additional fighter jets and Navy warships to the Middle East as Washington seeks to bolster defenses following threats from Iran and its allies, Hamas and Hezbollah. A rare ally of both the U.S. and Iran, Iraq hosts 2,500 U.S. troops and has Iran-backed militias linked to its security forces. It has witnessed escalating tit-for-tat attacks since the Israel-Hamas war erupted in October. This is all coming from Reuters tonight. You can read the rest of the article if you wish. It is online, but that is breaking news, and I referenced that specifically as an exclusive coming from them, but there is so much more going on over in the Middle East tonight. Antony Blinken reportedly meeting with G7 leaders and telling them that Iran could retaliate to those killings within the next 24 hours. We've been reporting that actually for the past 3 days, saying that response from Iran is really expected within 72 hours. That was about almost 72 hours ago. That is what the information is that has been coming forward from intelligence officials to various media outlets in the know. And that is what we've been telling you. Will this actually happen? I don't know. Nobody actually knows. Even Joe Biden doesn't seem to know. He was asked what he thought Iran might do. Let me see if I can find that clip for you. I had it queued right up here. I was ready to rock and roll with it. There it is. Okay, so I've got him here. This is a Fox News clip. Reporters shouting questions from a distance today. And this is Joe Biden's response. This is how in the loop the commander-in-chief is on the Middle East file.
President! Do you think Iran will stand down? Do you think Iran will stand down, sir?
I hope so. We don't know.
President!
What? I don't know. That's the bottom line with Joe Biden. He doesn't know. Antony Blinken has a different view on things, that's for sure. And what are we seeing on the other side of the pond? Well, Russia reportedly throwing support behind Iran, ready to, again, reportedly stand behind Iran and against Israel, at least according to some online social media influencers, like this one, Mr. Hinkle, saying that that's what Vladimir Putin is ready to do, stand behind Iran. And we have seen a growing relationship between Iran and Russia, especially over the past year, and especially, I would say, sort of since October 7th, although over at the State Department today, we saw officials there say that they really haven't seen much from Russia on the Middle East situation at all, even since October 7th, that they've really been largely absent from the conversation. That, according to Matthew Miller, during today's press briefing at the State Department. The subject matter, of course, today, front and center, what's going to happen in the Middle East with possible escalation. What's the view of the State Department on this current situation with Iran? Well, let's listen to the man himself, Mr. Miller.
Turning to Bangladesh, we have seen the announcement that Prime Minister Hasina resigned from her position and departed Bangladesh. We are monitoring the situation carefully. The United States stands with the people of Bangladesh. We urge all parties to refrain from further violence. Too many lives have been lost over the course of the past several weeks, and we urge calm and restraint in the days ahead. We welcome the announcement of an interim government and urge any transition be conducted in accordance with Bangladesh's laws. Finally, we are deeply saddened about the reports of human rights abuses, casualties, and injuries over the weekend and past weeks.
Queued up because
we
an
share
Amber
our
Alert
deepest
just
condolences
came in.
with those who lost loved ones and those who are suffering. With that,
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
I think we're going to address the
Thank you.
current situation here anyway.
Thank you. On the Middle East,
yeah.
your comments in the opening suggest that you are quite concerned about the risk or the potential for a much wider war. What exactly is the State Department doing in terms of preparation for that possibility?
So we are concerned about the risk of the conflict escalating, the conflict spreading. It's something, as you know, we've been concerned about since October 7th, and there have been various times over the course of this conflict that the risk has been especially acute. Now, of course, is one of those times. And so what we are doing, the Secretary and others in the State Department are communicating with all the relevant parties in the region to make clear, as I said in my opening remarks, that escalation is in no one's interest, and asking that people use their diplomatic relationships to make that clear to others in the region.
Okay, for this, my specific question, and I'm sure there's tons to say about your outreach to other countries. I'm talking about internally within the U.S. government, what is being done to prepare for the possibility that that there is a wider war and that there will be American citizens in need.
So there are a few different things. So let me take a broad answer to that before getting to the specific last one. Obviously, you've seen the Defense Department make certain announcements with regard to force posture. Deterrence is an important part of encouraging de-escalation. And so we will continue to take steps along that regard. Of course, we prepare for the possibility of further conflict. That being said, I want to just make it clear in answering the question that we don't think conflict is inevitable or should be inevitable, or that increased conflict is inevitable. We're going to continue to work to try to prevent it from happening. But of course, we prepare for all possibilities. That has been the case since October 7th. Obviously, you saw that over the weekend, we sent out a message to American citizens in Lebanon, making clear that Lebanon is a do not travel country. It's a level 4 country. We issued a security alert encouraging U.S. citizens who wish to depart Lebanon to book any ticket available for them, even if that flight does not depart immediately or does not follow their first choice route. And we'll continue to monitor the situation and make assessments and take actions based on response to real-time events.
All right, so last one. You keep saying, or you're saying that a wider war is not inevitable, and you don't think it should be inevitable. But do you think that an Iranian response or an Iranian attack on Israel is inevitable, whether or not that leads to
yeah.
a broader war?
So I can't speak to what may or may not happen. That is a decision for Iran to make. We have been sending consistent messages through our diplomatic engagements, encouraging people to communicate to the government of Iran that escalation is not in their interest, and that we will defend Israel from attacks, and that escalation does not serve Iran's interests, just as it doesn't serve the interests of anyone in the region. So I don't want to say it's inevitable. Certainly the risk is there, and that's why we are pursuing these diplomatic engagements.
And from your perspective, is any kind of Iranian response an escalation?
I don't want to prejudge from here what our view of a response might be, other than to say we don't want to see Iran take further action. And that's the message we are consistently delivering to our partners in the region.
All right, so that's basically it. And there's, that's a bit of a word salad and dancing around a real answer. So who knows what the U.S. is really thinking or planning, what the U.S. response will be to a possible Iranian response, to the response from Israel, which is a response to everything else, which is a giant response to everything, because we have escalation, ongoing escalation in the Middle East, getting us all a step closer to a possible wider global conflict. And with that, we're seeing Russian Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu arriving in Iran for a planned working visit. He will be discussing global and regional security issues. He's going to engage in talks with his Iranian counterpart, Ali Akbar Ahmadian, and Chief of the General Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, Mohammad Bagheri. Shoigu will be received by Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. The agenda is going to include a range of issues of cooperation. The point to take note of here is that what we're talking about is increasing cooperation between Russia and Iran, which I just mentioned. We've already seen Kremlin spokesman Dmitry reveal that Russian President Vladimir Putin would be meeting with Pezeshkian at the BRICS summit in Kazan in October. So the relationship is blossoming between Iran and Russia. Is that a good thing, bad thing, neutral thing? I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. I will say that you can see the lines being clearly drawn between who's with who and who's with who. The West versus the East again. It seems like we're revisiting old conflicts, having learned nothing from the past. Even on the economic front, we're seeing things repeat. Today's big market crash, which has a lot of people in a tizzy, but not me so much. I'll tell you why, as I explain and go through this story. Tonight, we're seeing Russian media say that I'll say this big market crash that we've seen today, I think it's being played up in foreign media. I think that a lot of what I'm seeing anyway, the way I'm seeing it, the way I would analyze this, it's a serious thing. But we're seeing some people exploit the crash on the information warfare front. They want things to crash. And some people are using it for clickbait. I would say foreign governments are injecting a narrative in here to suggest that, the collapse, to make it look as bad as it possibly can look. Let's take a look, first of all, at what the situation with this market crash is. So let me just get you the latest numbers on this. Here we go. So It's the worst day that Wall Street has had since 2022. Some people looking back as far as 1987. The market fell. It plunged today. The Standard & Poor's 500 fell 3%. Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped more than 1,000 points, and the NASDAQ Composite slid 3.4%. It followed a 12.4% plunge for Japan's Nikkei 225. That's the worst day for the Japan market since 1987. I remember the crash of 1987, and I'll tell you why I'm not that worried. Because I remember the crash of 1987. And as bad as that seemed at the time, and it seemed pretty bad to me, even as a journalist working and doing stories on it that day, as bad as that seemed, I remember sitting at lunch that day with my assignment editor. And we had a discussion about it. And he had some stocks, and he was older, wiser, more experienced than I. And I was talking about how bad the situation appeared to be. And he wasn't worried at all. In fact, he saw it as an opportunity, which I knew it was, but because I was so focused on the negative aspects of it, I really had kind of lost sight of the positive end of it as well. You know, he didn't panic. And the smart people don't in a situation like this. He saw it as an opportunity to buy stock. And that's exactly what he did. The market crashes. When these things happen, they always, it's like a yo-yo. Things always overcorrect. What we're getting right now, in my view, and this is not meant to be financial advice, first of all, because I am not a licensed financial advisor. So do your own research, do your own due diligence. I'm just offering my opinion. But when these things happen, they generally represent an overcorrection because people respond emotionally to these things, and they respond to what they are seeing in the media. As they lose confidence and get worried, people panic and they sell off their stocks because they're afraid that the market is going to crash to the point where they're going to maybe even lose everything. And that could happen. Nobody really knows for sure what is ever going to happen. But traditionally, almost every single time, the market, when it goes through a correction like this, it really tanks. When it tanks like this, it's because you're getting an emotional component in the decision-making process, individually and collectively in the aggregate. And the more the price drops, the more scared people become, you get a run on the market. Well, that's why they halt trading, to prevent a complete stock market crash. And so there are checks and balances in place to prevent a complete crash, but you still tend to get an overcorrection. A correction like this is the market, the natural law of the market coming into play, correcting prices. It's telling us that stocks are overvalued. It's because of inflation and the economic policies of today's government, of the Biden and Trudeau administrations. That's why you're getting what you're getting. But when it dropped, and we don't know how far it's going to drop, but generally it will, in a situation like this, it drops more than it should because there's an emotional component to it. It's that the bottom price does not represent the true market value of the stocks. And so once it hits the bottom, when it comes back, it will bounce back up. Maybe not to the same level immediately where it was, but it's going to rebound. It always does. So that is basically what the smart people do. That's why Warren Buffett, everybody was saying, Warren Buffett sold off a record amount of his stocks, and even Apple Yeah, no kidding. Because he has analysts who advise him constantly and he knows what he's doing. So he sold off a lot of his stock just before this happened because he could see what was going on. The sharks always do that. The big fish, right? They know what's what and what's happening. And so they sell off a lot of their stocks. So a lot of people, smart people, watch the big fish to see what they're doing. And when they sell, the sharp people also sell. When they buy, they buy. Why did Warren Buffett sell off? Because he's getting ready to buy, not to stay out of the market. He's liquidated. He's holding cash. He'll wait for it to tank, go to the bottom, just like my assignment editor did back in 1987, and he'll wait for it to hit rock bottom, and then he'll buy. This is an opportunity to buy, not to sell. To buy if you know when to buy. But the trick is you have to buy at just the right time because when it bounces back, it could bounce back up very quickly. And generally speaking, that is what happens. It bounces back up. If you can identify the bottom, that's your opportunity. Buy low, hold it, and sell high. That's what you need to do. Plus, if you listen to a lot of financial advisors, if you're not into playing the market that way, don't panic. You might not want to sell because the key to long-term investing is to buy, hold, and the market averages out over a long period of time. That's why, honestly, at this point, I'm not really that worried. This, even though the market plunged like 1,000 points today, we've seen this before. Online, in social media, I'm seeing people post things like, "We've never had a crash like this before." There was a post, I can't recall which, I remember what the account was on X, but I actually left a comment because the comment was that we have never had a crash of 1,000 points like this ever in history, and that is not true. It's simply false. In fact, and I said so. I commented on that post back, Great Depression, 1929. That was Black Monday. Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 12.8% that day. Now, we did not have the kinds of checks and balances and mechanisms in place to protect the market from completely crashing in 29 that we have today. We did learn some things from that experience, and economists have developed different approaches to the markets, and policies are in place now, safeguards are in place to protect us against a complete crash of the market. Not to say that it can't happen, it very well could, and we just saw a massive drop today. But on October 28th, 1929, Black Monday, the Dow Jones dropped 12.8%. And then the next day, Black Tuesday, the Dow Jones fell another 11.7%. It was devastating. Then back in 1987, and I was alive back then because I'm a fossil, the Dow Jones plummeted 22.6%, a drop of 508 points one day. And then there was the dot-com bubble burst. 2000 to 2002. It wasn't a single day crash, but the Dow Jones experienced several significant drops during that period, and that really hurt a lot of people. And then there was the big one, and that was in 2008. September 29th, 2008, Dow Jones fell 777.68 points. October 15th, 2008, Dow Jones fell another 733 points. And then December 1st, 2008, the Dow Jones declined 679 points. I remember that too, vividly. That crash, which was really the result of the failures in the real estate market at that time, impacted even my business. Things never came back. I was still working in mainstream media, and I had a media company as well that I was running at the time, and the revenue never came back. The business that we had at that time, half of the business just went away overnight, and it's never recovered since then. And if you speak to economists, like I'd say the real credible economists, they'll identify 2008 as the year that the financial system really kind of cracked or maybe even broke for the West. And that's because of all the money printing and all of the debt that has been incurred over time. And it just shows that the economy has been largely mismanaged by our politicians. Oh, you'll see people blaming capitalism, but in reality, it is politicians trying to give people too much stuff for free and financing it on the backs of people who have saved and by mortgaging the future of our children, grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren with massive amounts of debt. Can we work our way out of this? That's partly what today's market crash is about. There was the flash crash of 2010, May 6th, 2010. The Dow Jones plunged nearly 1,000 points within minutes, but then recovered. Ah, you see, there's another example of massive overcorrection down and then bounces back up. People made money on that opportunity too. This isn't just a crisis. This isn't just a crash. This can be an opportunity and will be for some people. Knowledgeable investors will know how to take advantage of this. Of course, it's only going to benefit you if you have some money to invest. And if you had it all wrapped up in these stocks, my experience has been the worst thing you can do is sell right now because you will definitely lose. I would say hold, but that's me. Don't take my advice. Go get your advice from somebody else. I will not be responsible for anybody following my advice here today. But I didn't sell anything, and I don't even know what I have because I have people more knowledgeable than me managing what little I have in my retirement fund, which probably won't be there by the time I get there because of inflation. But that's a whole other story, and I don't mean to be too negative, but you know what I'm talking about. And then it got worse in 2020. Oh, yeah. I mean, to hear that guy, to see that post today, it was like fear mongering. We've never had a crash like this before. 1,000 points in one day. Oh, yeah? What about February 27th, 2020? Dow Jones dropped 1,190 points. Then March 9th, 2020. This is during the pandemic, right? Because there was no damn productivity. People were panicking. People didn't know what the heck was going on. The Dow Jones fell 2,013 points on March 9th. March 12th, declined again, 2,352 points. March 16th, Dow Jones plummeted again, 2,997 points, almost 3,000 points. So to see a post like that from somebody saying that we've never had a crash like this before, not true. I think some people are not only, I think some people are hoping for the worst, frankly. Who would those people be? Clickbait artists, people who are trying to scare the crap out of you for some reason, maybe to get you to invest in something like maybe gold. There's a lot of that going on, and I would advise real caution about how and where you invest in gold, if you invest in gold at all. Be very, very, very careful because I'm seeing some firms out there selling numismatic coins as investments where they charge exorbitant commissions, not only on the sale, but then they say that if you're not satisfied with your purchase, they'll buy your gold back. They have a buyback guarantee, but read the fine print, and sometimes they don't even put the fine print in the agreements. I've seen some of these companies charge as much as 40% commission to buy it back. So by the time you're done, you could lose if you bought it. If you bought the gold, weren't happy with what was going on, and got upset because of the large commissions that you weren't expecting to pay, and then you tried to use the buyback option, and they bought the gold back from you and then charged you the additional commission on top, some of these companies will take as much as 80% of your retirement funds. And that's what they're after, is your retirement money. So be very darn careful about where you invest and how you invest in gold. Make sure you're using a reputable company and check out those contracts that you sign, the agreements, because it can really, really cost you. And they are going after seniors, some of these companies, and a lot of them are not reputable. Just a word of warning. And again, don't take my advice because I'm not a registered or licensed financial advisor. This is just me with my opinion. But I'd say being careful, advising people to be careful is usually pretty sound advice. What about crypto? Cryptocurrencies? Crypto, well, Bitcoin today, people are saying, oh, Bitcoin crashed today. I was receiving messages from a couple of people who are saying it's crashing. You gotta get your money out. The only safe place is cash. The only safe thing right now is cash. Not really true. Bitcoin, yeah, it in cryptocurrency, it took a hit too over the last 24 hours. But I'm standing back, and this is again my assessment, personal opinion. It's not that bad, really. I mean, it's bad, but not that bad, because we've seen crashes like this with crypto many times. It goes up and down like a yo-yo. It's very, very volatile. I checked the prices just before we came on the air here tonight, and here's what I've got. That was the last price that I checked online, 54,687 and 90 cents US for one Bitcoin. And that's the 1 year chart. Okay? Not as horrific as you might think, because if you're buying and holding and dollar cost averaging and investing over the long term, if you bought a year ago, you really haven't lost anything. You're still up compared to 1 year ago, because the price 1 year ago, exactly 1 year ago today, was $29,401 US. Today, the price is $54,687. Now, it has lost a lot because earlier this year, we were looking at a high of about 71,000. And it was just days ago that it was quite a bit higher than that. But, you know, it goes up, it goes down. It goes up, it goes down. And overall, if you look at the long-term chart for Bitcoin, it has just been progressively going up. Now, that's not to say that it's going to continue to go up. It's very unpredictable. This is something quite new. And we had Bitcoin Ben on talking about it last week. And I think we're going to have him back on later this week as well. And I'd love to have him back on because there's so much to discuss. His view on Bitcoin, of course, is very bullish still, I would expect. It has been, it always is, because he's very much into it and has a lot of confidence in cryptocurrency. But confidence is what really predicates and props up Bitcoin and all cryptocurrencies. It's really backed up by adoption by the public and public confidence. If people believe in it, it will be so. If they cease to have confidence in it, it might crash. That is why foreign governments who would like to see the US and Western economies fail are, I think, injecting information into the news cycle on this through some social media avenues. And it's to undermine confidence in the US economy, a lot of it. And connecting it to the war effort, that's a double whammy. That's why tonight, and I'll say that this is a very biased report in my opinion. This is from Sputnik in Russia. And don't forget that Russia, Brazil, India, China, South Africa, these other BRICS nations, and there are a growing number of them, they have a vested interest in promoting and propping up their own currency now and their own financial system, which is what they're putting up against the West's financial systems. So here's this article, and what's the headline? It says, How Israel and Iran Escalation May Break the Back of the Global Economy. So we're talking here about the markets crashing. Israel and Mideast markets crashed on Monday on fears of retaliation from Iran and Hezbollah. So they're attributing the market crash to the conflict between Iran and Israel, and of course Hezbollah as well. What's going on in Palestine? Says if the standoff between Tel Aviv and the axis of resistance escalates, it will reverberate through global markets and hit the U.S. economy hard, Sputnik's pundit says. So of course, you know, they're going to take that take on it. the only reason I show you that, and they're free to say that, and they may well be right. I'm just saying that you have to put these things in perspective and look at everyone's bias as they report on these things. My experience, this is not a good thing. Some people have lost a lot of money today, but we will recover. We're always going to, one way or another, we're going to be okay, I think, as long as people don't panic. You panic, you're going to make bad decisions. Don't get emotional. It's hard to do that. Try not to get emotional about this stuff. Don't make rash decisions. Think things through. Educate yourself. Get good advice from people who really know what they're talking about. Don't fall for scams. Question everything. Look at all the information, but understand that a lot of the information that you are being given, both politically and financially, is driven by bias and agendas quite often. Whether it's someone who is looking to take your money because they are in a position to do that, and maybe they're not even entirely reputable and they're trying to screw you, or it could be someone with a political agenda trying to just scare the general public and undermine confidence in the US dollar, in cryptocurrencies. Everything in the economy is propped up by public confidence. If people lose confidence, things will crash. If everybody loses confidence in Bitcoin and starts selling it off, then Bitcoin will cease to exist and everyone will lose everything. If you lose confidence in your own economy, the economy will crash because people will sell off their stocks. They won't have confidence in the US and Canadian dollars. And we do have problems, no question about it. But we've been very resilient, even through those tougher times, like during the pandemic. Even during that, yeah, we had financial tools that came into play, but we survived it. We survived 1987. We survived the big crash of 2008. And we have, I would say, new tools, new technology, including artificial intelligence, to increase productivity on the industrial front. And maybe we'll even get a new president and maybe a new prime minister and revised economic policies that can help facilitate the return to real prosperity over time. Can we work our way out of this? I don't know, but I'm still optimistic. And whatever's going on today, it doesn't have the feel of the big crash. This isn't it. Some people are trying to portray it that way in the media, but this ain't it. If this was it, you'd see people jumping out of windows from office towers on Wall Street, like we did in 1929. If it gets that bad, that's the kind of stuff you'll see again. And this ain't it, folks. It doesn't have any of the earmarks of the big crash of 29. Not yet. It might still be coming, but not today. Not today, you financial satans. Not today. I'll be right back.
He's a fighter. He's a survivor. President Trump, defiant, strong. He is determined to make America great again. Pay tribute to the 45th President of the United States with this collectible t-shirt from the Maverick News Memorable Moments collection. Even a would-be assassin's bullet could not stop him. Instead, he emerged with his fist in the air ready to fight. For freedom. Get your Trump Fighting for Freedom t-shirt with any donation of $30 or more to Maverick News. There are 2 iconic artistic designs to choose from. But there is only one way to get these. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Support free speech. Free media. Support Maverick News. Call 1-866-248-1490 or order online at supergeeks.tv.
the sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media outlets publishing the same fake are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are Mavericks, we are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So I don't watch Aiden Ross, but I guess he's a big time social media influencer, blah, blah, blah. And today, I guess he was, well, he interviewed Donald Trump, did a 90-minute live stream on this platform. What's it called? Kick. I don't use that either. I'm not even really familiar with it, but this guy's got bucks, I guess, because he gave Trump a Rolex and a Cybertruck, which to me seemed freaking weird. Is anybody familiar with this Aiden Ross guy? What is he like? What is it like? That's huge money. And then he's giving it to Trump. I don't generally give gifts to people I interview like that, but I don't know. Like, I don't pay for interviews because it isn't really like, that's just not the way it's done around here. Never have. So it happened at Mar-a-Lago, and I guess this guy, some people say he's controversial. He has 580,000 viewers, I guess, watching this today. At its peak, anyway, 580,000, like over 500,000 people watching this, and I don't even know who this guy is. How did I miss who this guy is? I don't know. Here, let's take a look at this. Okay, so this is him getting the Cybertruck, and it's got him. To me, this is weird, but maybe this is the new media. This is the new way of doing stuff. I don't know. And a Rolex. You gave him a Rolex earlier. Does anyone else think that's weird? I think that's weird. I would say that guy's not a journalist. He's a media personality. He's putting on a show. And I guess when you have that many people viewing on a consistent basis, you're making mega bucks online. You can buy toys like that to give away to people you interview. I did take note of what he said about those photos, though, and yes, that is a true thing. In fact, I can show you here right now. This on Google. This is the original photo from the attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania. An iconic photo. Absolutely, right? And in fact, we used that to create the Trump Fighting for Freedom t-shirt right here. So there's that photo. This is the altered photo that was being used to fuel the conspiracy theory that the assassination attempt was staged. So they put smiles on the faces of the Secret Service agents to suggest that it was faked. That's the fake. That's the original. That's the fake. That's the original. Trump blames Google. I don't know for sure who altered the photos, who did the photoshopping, whether artificial intelligence was used to create that image. I don't know, but it is a real thing. The fake is real. Okay? So it's not real. That is fake. That is the real shot. That is a photograph that was taken by an Associated Press media photographer at the scene that day. That's cropped in and altered to make it look like they're laughing, smiling, having a great time. And that's not the case at all. Totally fake. Fake news. See how easy it is to manipulate people, manipulate things? Yeah. And I can tell you as well that the media, Google is suppressing information coming out of the UK with regard to these riots that we're seeing on the streets. I can tell you that they're doing it because they did it to Maverick News overnight. Last night's broadcast blocked on some channels by Google, including one of our YouTube channels. They picked up on keywords in the description, became aware of the content that we were running, specifically related to the riots in the streets, and because it was related to racism, they blocked the one channel. And I know that, it's available still out there, but the other descriptions didn't provide those kinds of keywords, so they didn't touch those versions of it online. They were specifically targeting certain words, phrases, content, and when they identified it, they went in and they're blocking it, suppressing it, shadow banning it. That's what they're doing. I don't know what the objective is, honestly, because by blocking the content that we provided yesterday, it was factual, truthful. So I don't know if they're trying to make things worse or trying to calm things down. I would say that overall, if they're going to act like that, they're going to make things worse when people realize that they're not allowing people to see what is really going on. But that is what they're doing. They're censoring, banning. They banned us. They took that stuff and they've blocked, on that channel, they blocked that content. So they're allowed, but they allow the fake photo of Trump to circulate online, and it's still available through the search engines and everything else. I don't know how much Google can actually do to stop that overall through websites and so on. But then over on YouTube, they're blocking factual, truthful exhibitions of content that should let you know exactly what's going on over in Britain because of these confrontations in the streets. People need to know. They absolutely need to know. Here's Dan Keith talking about this. He says the British government is lying to the world. In his post on Twitter, he says, if you're outside of the UK and want to know the truth about the riots there and why you keep hearing the name Tommy Robinson, here's the truth the media won't give you. Let's tune in to see what he says tonight about what's going on over in Britain with these riots. And we know that Keir Starmer saying that he's going to use the full force of the law against protesters, saying that there isn't two-tiered justice being used, but a lot of people see things the other way. They do see bias from police, and I would say that's probably kind of true. Kinda.
For all of you outside of Great Britain who may be wondering what in the hell is going on in that country, let me break it down for you. The protests on the streets by the citizens there is the culmination of decades of the British government ignoring their cries for help, cries to stop the mass importation of illegal immigrants who are incompatible with their culture. In fact, these are immigrants, many of them, that hate absolutely everything that Great Britain stands for. They rape and murder their daughters and sons, commit violent knife attacks, and stalk the streets looking for new prey, largely in the name of a religion called Islam. And many of the native British women are afraid to even go out of their homes for fear of being assaulted, yet the British government for all this time has ignored and continues to ignore their people. What's even worse is the fact that the woke government and the media have become such DEI slaves, they won't even mention any of these horrendous crimes for fear of being labeled racist or Islamophobes, and yet they continue to import these predators day in and day out at the expense of the public they terrorize. Then they put them all in hotels and little towns and villages all across the country where the once safe and happy locals must now fear for their safety. Now, something you may have also noticed is the media and the politicians in Britain blaming all of the violence on far-right thugs and EDL and a gentleman named Tommy Robinson. So first of all, that's a lie. Most of the people in the streets protesting their government are simply distraught citizens who desperately want to see change as the country and the culture they love so dearly is diminishing right before their eyes. Secondly, this group called the English Defense League, or EDL, hasn't existed in over a decade, so that's another lie. And lastly, Tommy Robinson, a man who has stood out above all others for the last couple of decades, warning all of Great Britain about the dangers of immigration, and the left absolutely hates him for being right. That's what you're seeing here. You see, there was this time when Tommy Robinson was hated all across Great Britain. He was called a racist and Islamophobe at a time when the public only had access to legacy media. But that time has passed with the advent of social media, where every citizen has access to the truth right in their pockets. The legacy media and the government's fake narrative about Tommy and immigration can no longer stand, and they hate that. People have woken up and are wise to the government and mainstream media lies. So all of those attacks on British citizens by immigrants and some within the Islamic faith that would have never been reported on by the media in the past, those are all being reported on now. So what you're seeing in the streets is the great awakening of the British people. And, you know, they've had their fill. Now, I certainly want to see them remain peaceful, and I would never advocate for violence, and neither would Tommy. In fact, Tommy Robinson recently organized 2 massive rallies of freedom-loving patriots with around 130,000 people combined, and there was no violence. You know, I remember specifically discussing with Tommy how Martin Luther King had the most successful protest movement in history for civil rights because it was totally peaceful, and he agreed that's how he wanted his movement to be. But the left in Britain, who hates this man, wants you all to believe that when he had access to an army of 130,000 patriots, he put on a peaceful rally, but then went on holiday and told a few hooligans to start trouble in the streets. Makes absolutely zero sense. And get this, in a supposed free Western country, the Prime Minister of Great Britain has indicated that when Tommy comes back from holiday, that he may be arrested and thrown in jail for simply criticizing his government's policies. The truth is the British government is having trouble coming to terms with their policy failures, and they need a boogeyman to blame. And that boogeyman is Tommy Robinson.
The real beef.
Okay. Let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back. I've got some stuff about Ukraine, and we're going to circle back and pick up where that State Department comment about Bangladesh was made. And we'll just update you on that as well. And then we've still got that exclusive interview with Mira Tirada coming up. So don't go away. Lots ahead.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So Elon Musk also being very heavily criticized for a post he had up yesterday on X saying that civil war in the UK is inevitable. I think I showed you that actually here last night. Some references from Keir Starmer even suggesting, I think, and other officials suggesting that those kinds of posts might even be illegal. I don't think Elon Musk much cares. And I don't think that those kinds of posts are illegal based on the British legal system. Now, things are pretty rough in Bangladesh right now. We've seen huge riots, people demanding the resignation of the government. And Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned after weeks of deadly anti-government protests. People dying in the streets there. Some of the stuff I'm not going to show you tonight because it is graphic. So Hasina has fled the country, reportedly landing in India. A lot of crowds in the streets, many of them cheering. Some even stormed the prime ministerial palace, looting, vandalizing parts of the residence. Hours after the resignation, President Mohammad Shahabuddin ordered the release of jailed former Prime Minister Khalida Zia, as well as all students who had been detained during recent protests against a quota system for government jobs. Huge unrest in Bangladesh. We heard reference to that in the news conference with the State Department earlier in the broadcast. So things will need to go through a process now. It'll take some time to reestablish stability in that country and get at least an interim government back in place. And we'll continue to monitor that situation. We're also looking at what's going on over in Ukraine regularly. We did talk a little bit the other night about a report from Ukraine that they had sunk the Rostov-on-Don, a submarine, a Russian submarine in Crimea. And there was some question about whether that was real or whether it wasn't, whether that was a legitimate claim or if it wasn't. I did identify a number of media reports acknowledging that Ukraine had claimed to have sunk the Rostov-on-Don. Well, now we have satellite imagery to back it up, and it does appear that the claim is authentic. They did sink the Rostov-on-Don submarine in port. And here's the satellite imagery to confirm that. What you can see here on the right, that green area, that is where the submarine was. And that green area underneath indicates where the submarine is now at the bottom in port. And it was sunk in port. And then this photograph on the left shows that they appear to have moved in a large crane, which they appear to be using they're going to try to raise the submarine from the bottom. So that is authentic satellite imagery that we've obtained, and I'm sharing that with you just to show you that these claims are in fact true. So that is a true story. In fact, this is the third time that particular submarine has been hit. It was in 2023. It was hit and tore a big hole in the side of it. These images released about a year ago. And this is the third time that particular $300 million sub has been struck. And so I don't know if it's salvageable, if that sub can be put back into service. No idea. But they apparently did manage to sink it. But subs are made to sink, right? So maybe a lot of it was Maybe some of the compartments were sealed off. I have no idea. Maybe Russia will be able to get it back up and repair it and still make use of it. No idea how extensive the damage is. I can just confirm that those are authentic satellite images, and it really did happen. So that is true. What else can I share with you tonight? Tucker Carlson, he's stealing my thunder. He's out there doing automotive reviews now. I mean, I thought I had the automotive journalism / hybrid political news analyst / journalist market cornered, but no, Tucker Carlson has to copy me, right? What am I talking about? I guess he's done a review of the Cybertruck. He did it on the Tucker Carlson Network. Here he is on YouTube doing a review of the Cybertruck, putting it to the full test. Okay, Tucker. You're a copycat. You just wanted to copy me, man.
Is you take your dogs in the truck.
Yep.
Your beagles for rabbit hunting, your spaniel for bird hunting, and they kind of live in your truck also. Have the dogs been in the truck?
Oh yeah, they love it. I don't think they think it's looking or anything like that.
Okay, good. Well, and you would know, because if dogs think that, you can tell.
Right.
All right. Well, let's test it out.
All right, we're gonna haul some dirt today.
Okay, so there he is. I want to see him driving the truck or whatever, man. Oops. No, see, he's making bank because they got ads running on the stupid YouTube channel. Anyway, you get the idea. Enough of that. Whatever. He just wanted to copy me, man. That's all I can say. So, okay, let's move on. Let's get into our feature interview, shall we, with Mira Tirada. Let me just, got a couple of notes here. Okay, so tonight we have this exclusive and in-depth interview with Mira Tirada, a figure who has been at the center of significant controversy, to say the least, and international attention. Tirada, formerly known as Oksana Vovk, has a complex and multifaceted story that spans from the United States to Russia, involving charges of drug smuggling, imprisonment, and a prominent role in Russian media. Mira Tirada, now 36 years old, fled to her native Russia in 2021 after serving 30 months in a Virginia prison for her involvement in a nationwide cocaine smuggling ring. Or at least those were the allegations. That's what she was put on trial for. Upon her return, she quickly became a protege of Yevgeny Prigozhin, according to Western media allegations. Prigozhin, you may recall, if you're kind of tuned into what we do around here, what we report on, and you're tuned into the political scene internationally, he was the head of the Wagner Group, a private military company known for its activities in various conflict zones, including Ukraine, and its influence on Russian also disinformation, because he does or did run the whole, like a big propaganda operation for Russia, an information warfare division for Russia. No question about it, it's true. And Tirada was appointed to the head of the Foundation for Battling Injustice, an organization that was founded by Prigozhin. So, of course, as a result, Western media, Western intelligence agencies, they're portraying her as a propagandist. Is she? Is she a freedom fighter or an advocate for prisoners, Russian prisoners in Western jails? Views may vary. In today's interview, Mira Tirada will share her perspective on these accusations against her, offering a unique view of her experiences and the events that have shaped her life. She will discuss her time in the United States, the conditions she faced in prison, and how these experiences have influenced her current work. Tirada will also provide insights into the goals and activities of the Foundation for Battling Injustice, an organization she claims is dedicated to highlighting human rights abuses, particularly those perpetrated by Western countries. Not so much on the other side. She has her bias. No question about that. And I'm prefacing everything you are about to see to make sure that this is fair, balanced, accurate, that the perspective is proper, so that you understand where all this is coming from and what underlies all of this and what the controversy is surrounding her. You need to know in order to have a proper perspective watching this. Since her appointment, Tarada has become a prominent figure on Russian television and social media. Using her platform, she does criticize the American justice system and highlights what she describes as the inhumanity of American prisons. She has also been active in promoting narratives that challenge Western perspectives, a role that has drawn both support and criticism. So this interview aims to provide an unfiltered look at Mira Tarada's journey, her current endeavors, and her views on the complex geopolitical landscape. We invite you to join us for this revealing conversation as we delve into the life and the work of a woman who has become a significant voice in Russia's information war with the West. We'll have it all for you right after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Welcome to the program, Mira. Great to have you with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much, Rick, for having me over. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And hello, everyone.
So we're going to talk about a couple of things here today. We're going to talk about your involvement with the BRICS Journalist Association, which is a new thing, and I think important because we're seeing the emergence of the BRICS nations and this other, I guess, an alternative economic stream that some countries are tapping into, and it's emerging. And we're going to talk about something even maybe more important, which is child trafficking, which is a global problem that I know that you're involved in combating as well through your organization. Let's start right there. Can you tell us a little bit about the organization that you are involved with?
Yes. So I'm the human rights defender, international human rights defender, and I'm the head of the Foundation to Battle Injustice, which is the independent nonprofit organization, and it's supported by private donations of Russian citizens. And basically, we work worldwide to address human rights violations, support civil activists. We provide different types of assistance to the victims who faced judicial injustice, police brutality, political persecution, and so on.
So is it fair to say that you would speak out against injustice, I guess, anywhere in the world where you might find it?
That's correct. Absolutely correct. At the beginning, we have been focused mostly on police, judicial, and prison brutality, outrage, and later on, I have uncovered crazy situation with human trafficking and children trafficking in particular, especially at the war zones, pandemic zones, and other zones where you have emergency cases. And with that, I got more involved in human rights violation in the current conflict between Ukraine and Russia, where we found out drug trafficking, organ trafficking, and NATO weapons being trafficked, to different countries and used by cartels and so on. So it turned out, as our organization deal with all types of injustice and criminality, and anywhere we see something unfair or illegal happens, we are there to investigate and find out the truth and make sure that it's delivered to the people worldwide, because a lot of people, they have no idea what is happening. The Western people so and so censored the information way, and they're in such a information vacuum, because all what they know is what their mainstream shows. All alternative media is blocked. For example, in Europe, like Germany, France, they fight with all alternative media, and if in US you still will see some, but in Europe it's a lot more hard. We also stand up for the freedom of speech, of course, and that's, as you mentioned, and how the BRICS Journalist Association was created. That's one of the reasons, because as the head of the Foundation to Battle Injustice, I've been working with many journalists, because a lot of their, many times their rights were violated, especially those journalists who go to the military conflicts, or who would go as an independent observer on the election, or any types of other, territorial decisions in Donbass, for example. They were unable to go back to their countries because they've been persecuted there. Their bank accounts were shut down. And of course, they would approach Foundation to Battle Injustice for the help. And that's how I uncovered, a lot of rights violations of journalists. And within 3 years, slowly I came to that conclusion that such an association must be created as a separate organization, because while I've been, trying to help to those journalists with my colleagues, we approached Committee to Protect Journalists, the one that's in United States, and unfortunately we never got the response. So it looks like this organization is just, picking the cases where they have political interest to pick up. And they will not protect every journalist. They will not protect even some of the Western journalists who've been persecuted for just, speaking out the truth about situation in Donbass.
Well, that's the problem with governments in a time of war is of course, it depends who's a journalist, what's a journalist, and governments tend to view journalism through a political lens. In times like this, and I know that you have extreme concerns about the website Marotrovets, where a lot of journalists are listed, as well as political activists and even artists, on what has been described as basically an international kill list for people who maybe hold views that are not in alignment with the government of Ukraine.
Yes, that's true. And even more, there are children on that list as well. There are over 320 children. And how I found out about it, it was very interesting. One young girl who is now my goddaughter, but she approached me. She was a young writer. And she wrote to me as to her colleague to share the writing experience. And then she told me that she is on Mirotvorets. And I couldn't believe what I've heard, because back then she was 13 and she's been on Mirotvorets since she was 12. And I asked her why she on it, why does she think she is on it? And basically what she did, she recorded the video message to the UN, It was even before the special military operation when she asked the UN to help her as the citizen of Donbass at that time to stop the Ukrainian attack in Donbass, because she as a child deserved a peaceful childhood and peaceful sky above her head. And for that reason, she got on Mirotvorets. And then I was wondering if there are any other kids. So I asked my colleagues to do some research, and we found over 300 children. And the reasons why they were on that kill list was because they went on to Crimea on vacation, for example. And since Ukraine, thinks that it's a Ukrainian territory, and they put those children on the list. They put the children on the list also for wearing the military uniform, from the Second World War times for the Victory Day. So if you're a child and you're active at the parade and you're honoring your grandparents, you would go to the kill list as well. So reasons like that. And what is scary about this part is that those children listed, was there pictures, was there social network pages, some of their home addresses are there, some of their contact information is also there. So it does look like a menu for the pedophile, like they can open it, choose the child by the picture, find them on social media, maybe even have their address. As my goddaughter, she had her home address posted on it. And one day just random person showed up at her house. So we know actually how it works, in reality, how people can just find out any child's personal information and just show up there, and how parents can feel safe and not to worry about their children when such thing happens. And the most ridiculous part, that on kill list, they're not only Russian citizens or Ukrainian citizens, they are citizens of different countries of the world, such as United States, Canada as well, and many other countries. And none of the governments stood up for those people. Why is that? Because the majority of people who are on that list, including me, are people who are standing with Russia or with Russian narrative. They may not even stand with Russia or Russian narrative, but they may be against of current government. Like if, for example, some American citizens had something against Democratic Party or current administration, they would go to the kill list as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we're absolutely opposed to that list because we don't believe journalists of any political persuasion or regardless of what they might have written, should be threatened with death. It's out of line, and we've even run petitions here on this program specifically focused on that issue. But let's just move on a little bit here and explain what the ultimate goal or the overall goal is for this new BRICS Journalists Association.
Basically, to protect journalists' rights, that's first of all, to bring up and lift up their life stories, why they're being persecuted, to give them another platform for the free speech, to give them an opportunity to build a community, where they can actually support each other and not be separated.
I see. And so how many journalists do you have as members of this new association?
Right now, we are still including people, like on a daily basis, people find out about the association and they ask to join. So currently we have, about maybe 50, but the lists keep adding up because we get the requests, but we have to overview who it is and what's the reason and the purpose and in what group to put, these journalists and so on. Because since we just started, we are still trying to see how it's better to operate the organization in order to serve the best purpose for these journalists, to get them to meet and to get to know each other and build projects together and so on.
And I guess it's a reflection of an emerging multipolar geopolitical reality that is new. It's replacing sort of it has been a unipolar geopolitical reality after the fall of the Soviet Union, but things have certainly changed in recent years.
That's true. It is absolutely true. And what's also important, that even though the organization called BRICS Journalist Association, and that was the idea from the beginning, but it's interesting because we have journalists there from Austria, for example, from Australia, from Canada, from United States, from other EU countries. And it's not really a BRICS Journalist Association. It is the full worldwide journalist association because people from different countries, journalists from different countries, they want to be the part of this unity. And it's interesting because not long ago, you probably heard about this George Clooney's foundation. The lawyer from George Clooney Foundation was saying that they will, accumulate information about Russian journalists and will submit it in order to indict them in United States for whatever reasons, which is absolutely impossible and unbelievable if the international organization will go down for it ever. That will be the total end of the international law in general, because it's just so discriminative. Because how would you choose that it's going to be only Russian journalists, right? And then how does it work with the freedom of speech? So it's just a violation of so many conventions. That's not even funny. So the journalists who are in our association, they were feeling, funny about this story. And we have decided to write a letter to George Clooney asking him to fire this woman because as an attorney, as a lawyer, she is absolutely unprofessional, unstable. She doesn't think about well-being of her boss making such statements, because it all at the end fell on George Clooney. And he didn't answer. I don't even know if he ever got that message, even though the Hollywood representatives even supported this letter because they reposted it on X. The Oliver Stone's producer and other people. And it was interesting to watch how this community, supportive community, works as a pieces, as the organs of one body, like how they really stood up for each other, how journalists from Brazil, from Australia, like from absolutely different parts of the world, different continents, stood up for Russian journalists in this case and said, no, this is absolutely unacceptable. We don't want such words being even said because it causes terrible precedent of persecuting journalists. And, their voice was heard on social media and supported by thousands and thousands of people.
How would you define what a journalist is? So what criteria would you use to include someone as a member journalist?
The journalist is the person who delivers information. To my opinion, journalists cannot pick the side. The journalist can only take the information and deliver it to the audience and let the audience to decide, what they think about it, what side they pick, and so on. Right now, what we see is, unfortunately, I see less and less journalism because we even had the case about situation like when the prisoner exchange was discussed. One prisoner was supposed to be swapped for another prisoner, Russian for American. And when we've been working on the articles, because it's a huge thing that is happening, and of course media is involved in it because it affects the public opinion as well, right? The people's opinion. It shapes people's opinion. And the journalist from, I think it was Bloomberg or Guardian, and like he said, the White House did, no, I think it was Guardian, no, Bloomberg. Anyhow, he said the White House didn't approve this article. Can you believe it? So like he basically in a private conversation, it was not public, of course, it was private conversation over the phone, when he says and admits that it goes articles are going through the White House, and someone approves them or doesn't approve if they don't sound right, if they don't benefit the U.S. government in this case, and so on. And this is not journalism. This is propaganda. This is manipulation of people's consciousness. And this is the violation of people's trust, because when you trust your government, you trust the media. And when somebody manipulates your opinion and your feelings, plays with your feelings, plays mind games, this is, this is not how it must be done, because it's not people who serve the government's supposed to serve the people.
You mentioned prisoner exchange. You've been involved in helping to facilitate some prisoner exchanges. Can you speak to that a little bit, to just give us some background?
I wouldn't say I was involved in the prisoner exchange much, because this is something that's happening between, again, governments. It has to be two sides will, and all types of intelligence is working on it. And we basically only, hoping to kind of make things go faster in some cases, because we do care about Russian citizens who are in prisons worldwide, actually. And me, myself, as being through such an experience, being a prisoner in foreign country, I know how difficult it is, because when you are on a different continent, when everything is foreign to you, including foreign food, foreign water, foreign culture, foreign air, foreign everything. Your family can't visit you. Everyone is far away. The foreign language. It's not equal circumstances as a prisoner who is a citizen of that country, because this is something that he used to. I mean, the country, the language, the culture, and all the details that I mentioned above, and your family and friends close by and can support you. It's completely different circumstances. And I still believe that if someone gets arrested overseas and has to serve their sentence overseas, it has to be reduced, because it's not even a situation as for the citizen.
So you touched on your experience with the U.S. justice system. You were arrested in Finland and then extradited to the United States on drug charges, but you've always maintained that you were innocent, that those were not legitimate charges. Can you talk about that?
Yes, you have the wrong information. I was arrested on a conspiracy in money laundering charge.
Okay.
And yes, to me, it's a trumped up charges. And I was not able to have a fair trial because I was manipulated all the time. I was put in a fear, I was tortured, and it was the worst experience I ever had. And you mentioned only American justice system, but I would also bring up the Finnish one, because I spent there almost 7 months, fighting this extradition. And there are many interesting circumstances during how the case was going, and how the Minister of Justice at that time signed a decision of my extradition, and the next day, he stood away from that position, and now currently it's the Minister of Defense in Finland. And then when I was extradited, it was a bunch of violation of not only human rights but international law, because US was smuggling me through the Netherlands. Netherlands didn't even know that there was a prisoner taken through their country. They just decided not to, even mention this. And it's just like a long story that I wrote a book about, a very short book though. Once I arrived in United States, that's where the true nightmares started happening, and that's where I saw what the U.S. penitentiary system is like, what the judicial system is like. I always thought that U.S. would go for the justice, and that's what we see on TV, on the movies. But they don't. Their best interest is only money, to save money. They're not interested to take you to the trial because it's going to be extra expense. And they already spent a lot of money, by keeping me in Finnish prison. Why do they need to go, to take me to the trial? The best scenario is to scare me till the point where I will sign whatever, they give me. You don't even need to make a statement yourself for the plea agreement. They will bring you a plea agreement that you will just need to sign. You don't need to say a word. They will write everything for you. And after that, even after I served my sentence, they still were not ready to release me. After I served my sentence, they kept me another 4 months in different prisons, moving me from prison to prison.
How many months did you spend in incarceration?
I spent 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yes. So, speaking of how justice system and legal system works in the United States, it's a total disappointment. And I wouldn't be the one, as, other prisoners say, oh, I've been treated like that because I'm Russian. No, I wasn't treated like that because I'm Russian. I saw how other prisoners were treated as well. And I wouldn't say they were treated any better when, the intelligence services or prison administration or whoever else in power in charge will need to get anything out of the prisoner. They will go down to the torture, to the hurting and harassing prisoners as physically as mentally, emotionally, not giving them food or taking the food away from them, not providing medical care, throwing them down to the shoe for no reasons, and so on. And it's not only about Russian citizens, and it's not only about Latin, for example, countries like Mexico or Salvador. No, it happened to the European citizens as well. So I just understood that the justice system itself in the United States is totally corrupt and totally like centuries back. They definitely don't know nothing about people's rights. And even more, what is it, like a 13th Amendment or something like this, that actually allows still to treat prisoners as slaves.
What do you mean by slaves? You mean because they would have
the amendment says
work?
Exactly, slaves as slaves, put them in shackles, make them work for like $1 and so on.
Yeah, 13th Amendment. I'm just looking it up. I'm Canadian, so I have to make sure I get my facts straight. 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution provides that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. That's the 13th Amendment.
Yep.
But what kind of torture did they subject you to?
Well, first day when I was brought up to the jail, I was beaten severely by the guards, and then it was mostly psychological pressure, different experiments like let me translate that. how you call it in English, like gaslighting experiments, Asha, and stuff like that. And then they did segregated me. You know that segregation, according to the international law, is a torture. They segregated me, and I spent like almost a year by myself in a cell. Not only by myself in a cell, like part of that time I was by myself.
You mean solitary confinement?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was by myself in a whole unit. It's not like you know, like when you segregated, sometimes you would be segregated in your cell, but you still would hear people coming out of their cells, and like someone would come by your door and stuff like that. No, they put me in a 100% confinement. I was by myself in a unit. I called it a bubble because I was locked in a cell, and then there is a unit around me, and then there is another bubble around me where the prison guard was sitting by the monitor screens where they were observing cameras and stuff. I was watched in a surveillance camera 24/7. Months, not like a week or something. I lived like that under watch for like almost a year. Then I was not taken outside for almost all 2 years because for the first reason, I was not supposed to be going outside. I was not working there because it said at my profile security risk. I don't even know what was security risk. Was I at the risk?
So you're saying they never let you go outside for 2 years ever?
Exactly. And only when I got to the federal prison, I was outside a couple of times because nobody was going outside at that time already because the COVID-19 started. And everybody was segregated at that time. Like people would be allowed to go outside of the cell for 1 hour every day or every other day. So your shower is outside of your cell. Like how are you supposed to shower? And we are women, I mean, like our bodies are different. And like you can't contact your family because you're locked in a cell. And it's been like that for a long, long time. And like the worst part out of all of it was that at the moment, maybe you remember the states, the state borders, they were locked. And so there were no food coming in. And we were fed like once a day. Likely was the hot meal. And sometimes we would sit on the chips, and stuff like that, which is like absolutely nutrition-wise is not balanced. And again, it's women prison. We have there pregnant women. We have people there with diabetes. Like they have to have, different kind of trays with the food. No one cared. Why would they? And when the pandemic started, they cut down on the stuff as well, So for them, it's just more economic, easier to work when we are locked up. And that's what they kept doing. Not because, the restrictions were still on, but it's just because they were comfortable to do so. It's easier to control prisoner when he or she is locked inside the cell the whole day long.
Because, U.S. law states that a prisoner must be allowed to go outside for at least 1 hour in every 24-hour period. There's a law that is on the books.
Well, you say it to them because when it's a weekend, they again short stuff and they wouldn't let anybody out. Do they care? How anybody would know outside about this? Okay, somebody maybe like 2 days later or 3 days later will call their relatives and tell them like, hey, this is what happened to them. What are they going to do about it? Go to the human rights defender. I know who comes to the prison, to visit us as a human rights defender or people from some religious Christian groups. It's those people who signed the contract with the prison or jail, who agrees to tell our secrets that we share with those people while we're doing any activities with them. So they do not work for us. They are there not to help us to go through our time. They are there to serve prison interests, government interests again. And everything we say and do it can be used and is used against us.
So why do you think that you were targeted that way? Were you involved in politics or something? Like, I have no idea why they would target you. Do you have any explanation or any idea why?
Well, I have 4 ideas about it that
Okay.
that I explained in my book, but I have no idea what was the actual reason and what they wanted. Especially, it became even more surprising when they did not release me, because at first I thought, okay, I will sign the guilty plea, because that's what they want from me, because they were threatening me that they supersede indict me and my time will go like from 5 years minimum up to 10 years minimum, and my maximum was 60 years. So I could have get from 10 up to 60 years. Or if I will sign the guilty plea, I will get less time. And it was one of the most difficult decisions in my life, deciding to sign something that I had no idea about, because again, the paper was given to me. It was not written from my words or anything like that, because I wouldn't speak to the intelligence services. And it was hard to sign under something that you don't even know about and have nothing to do. It's like mentally difficult to do. And then I spoke to my family, and they were like, look, the situation is this: you won't be able to defend yourself. You won't be able to drop this charge off, because you have a court-appointed attorney whom I told, like, check this. During these days, I was in a hospital. I have medical papers. All what you got to do is show this, and it will give the evidence, that this is all lie. The charge is trumped up. But he wouldn't do it, because he already made an agreement about different case, that over there, the same prosecutor will give a different time, a different deal. And over there, my attorney already was getting paid from that prisoner. He was hired. So it's a complicated the way how it works. Those court-appointed attorneys, they also, work for money as well. Unfortunately, I was sold out by my attorney for the other prisoner, for the other better deal. And but I had to make this decision, like, it's in between two evil, you pick the least evil. And like both of those choices were evil to me, but I picked the least evil, the smallest time. And when I signed the plea, I thought they will leave me alone, and like finally will take me out of the solitary confinement and will stop torturing me and will give my medicine and like, treat me different. And it didn't change. And then I thought maybe when I get to the federal prison, it's going to be different. And time will, because I already been in prison in Finland. So I've seen how it is. I was in the maximum security where people with four charge, 4 times they served their sentence, and this is their 5th time. That's what kind of people were there. Double murderers, and so I've seen how this worked in Europe, and I thought it's the same in the United States, but that's not what it is. It's not the same. It's completely different system. But to my opinion, I thought in federal prison maybe it will get better, but they continued torturing me. And then like all the pandemic happened, so it made all the situation worse. Then I thought, okay, I served my sentence. Now they're going to release me and I'm going home. But guess what? They took me to a different jail where they hid me for almost a week. And then they took me to another jail and another, like 4 different jails. So they kept moving me and not releasing me. And they kept torturing me and kept through other people convincing me to stay in the United States for whatever reason. I don't even know what they wanted from me. So at that point, going back to your question, I had no idea why they arrested me, what they wanted from me, why they were like doing all these experiments or whatever on me and other prisoners. And I just, was trying to get through this time and go back home and help other people who is going through the same situation. And the main thing I realized, I don't even want to know why, because then when I'm trying to find out why they keep my mind busy with looking for that answer. And I don't want them to occupy my mind. I'm not going to dedicate to them as any second of my life anymore. I'm going to take control over my life, and I'm going to choose what I'm thinking about and, what I'm spending my time on.
The charges, do they not stem from you lived in or were in the United States for some time prior to that, right? Because the United States must have been focused on you for some reason, and that's related to the time that you were living in the U.S. What were you? When were you in the U.S. and what were you doing here? Were you a student or working, or what brought you to the United States?
I've been traveling back and forth. I actually lived in the United States for almost 6 years, and first I came with the program Work and Travel, and then I was studying there at the International Language Institute, and then I just got married there, and I was a housewife, not as some. Big tabloids are writing that the Houston businesswoman, they called me. No, it's completely false because I was the housewife.
I see. And I read that there were drug charges related to drug charges. That's why they were so focused on you. Is there any truth to that at all?
Maybe there were drug charges. They were trying to relate to it, but that has nothing to do with me.
Okay. Well, we kind of got off on a sidetrack there. I knew that you went to jail. It wasn't really why I wanted to talk to you today, because that's a whole separate issue. But let's move on to this I guess, issue that you're trying to deal with on a global scale. Now that you've returned to your homeland, to Russia, you have become involved with this organization, Foundation to Battle Injustice. The incentive for you to become involved in that is because, I guess, initially because of your experience with the U.S. justice system, and now you're very focused, among other issues, but the one that's top of the list right now is child trafficking, I guess. Tell me why you're focused so much on that.
It's hard to explain why. I guess it started all with that girl who approached me, who is now my goddaughter. Her name is Faina. And step by step, I started understanding how life is for the children in Donbass. She shared with me, what she's been through, because when Ukraine attacked Donbass, she was 5 years old. And she sent me the video how they were hiding in a basement, and what happened to her after, and how it changed her life. I look at this girl and I see adult locked in a child body because she is so grown. And then I got more involved, with kill list and children who are on it. And I've been communicating with more children. And then we did the bridge in between children of St. Petersburg and children of Donbass. And I saw how they support each other and stuff. And it's just like, when you're doing something, you're going deeper and deeper into the subject, and you find yourself already so much in it that there's no way, you don't even know how you got in there, and you cannot get out, basically. And working with this, I figured my work became famous overseas as well. And I started being approached by women whose children were taken from them. They were EU citizens, they were Ukrainian citizens who moved to Europe when they left Ukraine after special military operations started. And I figured that, there's something wrong. Why, like, a majority of people whose children are taken, they are, immigrants to those countries. And I started looking for more information about juvenile justice, and how that works. And I found out that all the, a lot of things are done because of the money, basically. And then we've been talking to some people in Donbass, and they told us that children are missing. And some information got to us that they're taken to Europe as well. And then we ran across the case that's been investigated by the Polish human rights defender who lives in UK. And she's been investigating it with some journalists in Spain. And it was about orphans' house from Artyomovsky district. Those were 85 children with special needs who were taken to Spain through Poland. And those women, they provided us with the legal proofs, with the documents, the copy of the documents on the custody of those children. And we found out that 7 of those children were missing. And even Spanish social services gave us a public answer by saying that those children already reached the age of 18. That's when the children, stop being underage in this part of the world. But we checked the documents, and none of them reached that age. And I will remind you that they're all with special needs, means they need to remain in the custody even after they are 18. And like that, we started tracking the organization that, brought them to Spain. And we found out that there was an organization from Argentina involved. And some of the children were taken to United States, some of them to Argentina. We were able to find out that that organization would give children for rent for 2 up to 3 weeks for $3,500. And when we published all that information, they removed their website in English, which was like, why would you do that? Like, people still can read it in Spanish.
What was the name of this organization?
Let me check. I already don't remember because it's been over a year. Milagros del Corazón.
I'm a Canadian, so I can't even spell what you just said.
I will send you the link. I will send you the link to that investigation so you can read it yourself. Sure. But apparently they don't know that anything that you post on internet, it leaves traces. So we were able to uncover, and restore all the information they deleted from their website. We were able to video record it, so it wouldn't be even like screens or photo screens of it, so nobody can tell it's fake or whatever. And we submitted the huge report to the UN, and we had the meeting at the UN with the Security Council, where we showed all the evidence that we were able to collect on this story and on the stories about abducted children from Donbass and abducted children in Europe from the families even. And we found interesting patterns of how it happens. And we found witnesses who made video statements to us as well. It was adults and children, even the girl who was able to escape and who was running away for 10 months in hiding. And we found out following information. There were 2 groups called White Angels and Phoenix, who were going around the towns and collecting information about children. And what they did, for example, before Christmas, they came to one of the towns and said, we want to bring, humanitarian aid for children and gifts because it's Christmas. So in order to get those gifts, you need to come with your child or bring this birth certificate with you. And parents did that, of course, and they would take pictures of the child or security, the birth certificate, and they would ask where they live and where they hide during the shelling, like what basements or like anywhere else. And a few weeks later, there were people who came back, and our witnesses told us that within those people, they recognized some of those people who came with the aid, but this time they were wearing the military uniform, and they already knew where to go, what children they were looking for. Like they had an order, to get blonde children with blue eyes, age 8 to 11, for example, and they would go to their houses or places where they hide and pick up those children with the force, or even without parents being home or next to the children. And in some cases, they would point the shotgun in the head, in the parents and take the children. That's the girl told us.
Isn't the White Angels supposed to be some sort of aren't they supposed to, like, they're portrayed in the media as trying to help people, at least in the Ukrainian media?
That's how they position themselves, and but that's not what the reality is like, because this is what media says, but we try to speak to people who live in those towns, who actually met them, and they know how it happens. They do approach by saying, we will take your child to the safer place. And some people some families let their children go, and then they cannot find them any longer. Some of them, they don't allow their children go, and White Angels, for example, tell them you can come with them, and halfway on the way somewhere, they would throw, they will stop the car and tell parents leave, and even force them to go. And in some cases, they just, grab children and take them. And I will send you the link to this investigation as well, where we have video statements from the witnesses who tell what happened. They told this not only to us, but they also told this to the Ministry of Defense and many other people. It's not just people that been found in the middle of nowhere and told what to say. Like, you can even hire a profiler if you want to, to read their faces, and everyone would tell you these people, they face something completely tragic and horrific. And they are saying the truth.
I mean, I do know that in any war zone, children are the most vulnerable. They become, targets for predators of all kinds. I know that, I know that you're not a fan of the Ukrainian government, but even they have acknowledged that there is a problem with this.
But I will tell you more. It's not like children just started disappearing in Ukraine. We actually were able to pull out official governmental reports of Ukraine, where it says that even before the conflict, on average, every year, 5,000 children were missing. That's a lot for such, for such tiny country like Ukraine. And there was times when I myself, was visiting Azov-Sea, and I remember at that time, which is, it used to be Ukrainian, and at that time there was a maniac or something. Everyone was saying, like, don't let your children outside by themselves, because children were missing, and then their bodies were found and their organs were pulled out. And it was like 20-something years ago. So Ukraine, unfortunately, as it is now, a terrible criminal hub, for drugs, weapons, and human trafficking, organ trafficking. But it used to be the same way 20 years ago. Since the Soviet Union time fell apart, it never been any good.
Well, I mean, this is a global problem, and I see these problems in almost every country around the world. It doesn't take much to find information like this about virtually any country, because it is a global problem. And I guess you're focused on trying to help on a global scale, because a lot of these kids come from all kinds of different countries, and then they're even shipped around the world, and it's a big problem.
Absolutely. Even I think it was last year when there was, in Niger, there was a conflict in the government with the opposition. And we found out that the French contingent, they took some children from Niger while that conflict was happening. And we've seen cases when children, and looked into the cases when children from Iraq and Afghanistan was taken, from different African countries, Libya, Somali, and others. So everywhere, as I said at the beginning, where there is any type of emergency happening in the country, there will always be those predators. And usually the predators don't work by themselves. There's always a conspiracy with someone who has easy access to these children. So it's someone who is working at this orphan's house. It's someone who is working for the government or at the border. Right now, what they're doing with Ukrainian children is very clever, because there are 5 countries that do not register immigrant children from Ukraine when they cross the border. Those countries are Poland, Spain, United Kingdom, Czech Republic, and Slovakia. And that's the major hubs where the immigrants are going to with their children when they're trying to leave the countries. And that's basically where the crimes, are happening. And it's not happening only by the predators, as I said, because in order to arrange such movement, the government or governmental workers must be involved, meaning there are corruption, meaning there are, criminal representatives in that government. And when such thing happens in a regular basis, because it's not 1-day conflict, 2-day conflict, it's not a week conflict or months conflict, it lasts for a long time. You have all the power as a leader of the country to investigate such problem, because all the media is talking about it. And when you don't investigate this and you don't fight this problem, you become a conspirator to it.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I'm sure you're no fan of the U.S. government, but, here in Canada, I know that there are efforts have been increasing to combat the problem. There's some people within the United States who are trying to combat the problem. I think public awareness here is increasing, in part because of the kind of work that you're doing internationally. And there's a gentleman by the name of Obed Bayamagusha. Are you familiar with him?
I have no idea who it is.
Okay, so he's also working. He's in Uganda, and he has a pretty high profile with the United Nations. He's testified at many hearings around the world. I queued up some information here because I'm kind of familiar with some of these issues as well. In fact, and I'm going to tell you about something that's happened right here in Canada related directly to what you're talking about here. Anyway, the Obed highlights a lot of these problems as they are present in Africa. Let me just play you this clip, and this will explain a lot why some of these children are trafficked, and then why their organs are harvested.
Difference so far in my country where I come in Uganda, it is reported that on average a child is killed every week. If you go to countries like Nigeria, it is worse. They're escalating at a high speed. It is reported by the UN agencies. The annual reports have actually provided statistics of some of these. In Senegal, in Namibia, Swaziland, Liberia, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, more than 30 countries, this issue is running very fast. And the cause is basically, number one, belief in superstitious practices practiced by witch doctors.
So there's a lot of evidence that has been collected by the United Nations saying that these superstitious practices and rituals and so on have been spreading more around the world even, but a lot of it coming from countries in Africa, these beliefs, and it has even been spreading to, some of the people involved in these practices even coming here to Canada through immigration, for instance. Now, there's Congressman Chris Smith has been combating this in the United States. I don't know him personally, but I'm aware of his work, and he's passed legislation in the United States to try to combat this in much the same vein as you. And I'll just play this for you, and I'll get you to comment after I run this and get your perspective on it. And he explains here what's involved here internationally.
Ritual abuse and sacrifice involve mutilating and usually murdering victims to remove certain body parts, bodily fluids, or organs for use in sadistic rituals. These rituals are commonly ordered by people who believe that conducting these horrific acts will somehow bring them wealth, health, or other good fortune. Much of this abuse happens while the victim is still alive and without anesthesia, and many die afterwards from shock, pain, or blood loss. In sub-Saharan Africa, we know that these crimes are especially prevalent around election seasons, when many children and adults go missing, never ever to be found, or to be found dead and body parts missing. This is because to this day, some politicians use rituals to gain power. Tragically, children and women are especially vulnerable to this abuse and are particularly sought out by the perpetrators of these crimes. Many rituals abuse or sacrifice innocent children. Albino people, particularly albino children, are at the very high risk of being kidnapped, trafficked, and abused for the sake of certain rituals. In Africa, it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of children each year are victims of ritual attacks in some form.
All right, so what do you have any views on this kind of testimony and this sort of evidence and how this plays into your efforts to combat these problems?
I know what they are talking about. There was a Polish journalist who was murdered for investigating such cases. We know that such issue exists in some European countries, I would say. But you know that it's not the limit, though, of how the children are used and abused, because they are used in begging, for example. They're used in prostitution, slave work. They're used in online and off-screen pornography. They're used in different kind of criminal scams. So, unfortunately, then further progress is going, then more use these perpetrators find in those children of any age. This is the worst part, because none of the children are secured, because
you're so right. You know, you're right on the money, and you know, this highlights another problem: child labor, right? Slave child labor even. And as we here in the West, and I think to some degree even over in countries like Russia, but mostly here in the West, as we push toward the electrification of the auto industry, there's this increasing demand for lithium and cobalt, and child labor is being used in countries like Congo to mine for those kinds of minerals. In fact, here's Congresswoman Susan Wild speaking to that very issue.
Against children in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has reached unprecedented levels. There are few worse places, if any, to be a child. The country has the world's highest number of UN-verified grave violations against children in armed conflict, end quote. We must hear this alarm. And we must ask tough questions about the lack of adequate protections to guard against the global hunt for unfettered access to critical resources like lithium that is fueling the violence in areas like the DRC.
What do you think should be done to combat that problem and avoid the exploitation of children by large corporations, companies that are using child labor to extract those minerals to produce batteries for electric cars and other ventures?
Well, first of all, and the most important thing, that this problem, child trafficking, and abuse, must be outside of politics. Once it becomes something outside of the politics, when it becomes not as a task for manipulation and political games, then we will see the actual results. But right now, unfortunately, this information is only used to condemn some countries, but not much is done to prevent such problems. Not much is done to deal with the victims, after all, to bring them back to the society and help them to have normal life. Not much done, in order to fight it. I mean, I'm talking about what can be done by the intelligence services, for example, with all the capabilities, technical abilities we have these days, with all the surveillance abilities, smart cities, with the facial recognition and so on. So much can be done. But why is this still happening? Huge question. And again, the answer would be where I was explaining you that those criminals, they don't act by themselves. There's always somebody from the government who supports this work, and some elites that are involved in using those children, whatever that will be, organs, blood, rituals, sex, and any other dirty stuff that they do with these children who deserve nothing but good. That's them.
Do you follow the trafficking in persons reports?
In prisons reports?
No, the trafficking in persons reports, the tip reports.
No.
No, the U.S. State Department issues those for every country.
No.
Yeah. So you can find these. It's a current system that has been set up, and every country, they have reports on every country related to all of this in extreme detail. So you just might be something you want to check out. So as I go through
something like this, I have a question. How do they get these reports? How do they collect that information?
Sure.
And main question, if they're able to collect those reports, why they don't do nothing to prevent that statistics?
Well, I think that people are. I mean, politics aside, there are good people and there are bad people out there, right? And some people are working to combat these issues, and I think sometimes people turn a blind eye or are simply ignorant and not aware of the extent of the problem. It certainly is a problem. And here in Canada, the government, I mean, there's just a case that the Canadian government really had an opportunity to administer justice in relation to something like this internationally, but missed the opportunity, didn't. And I'll share the story with you because you're maybe not familiar with it. It unfolded 1 hour from where I sit tonight in my hometown of London, Ontario, where there was a murder committed. And the person who was murdered was this guy right here, Bill Horace, 44 years old. Now, do you know who Bill Horace is? Are you familiar with this at all?
No.
Okay. So Bill Horace was a commander in the Liberian military under Charles Taylor, who was involved with a lot of horrific crimes, a lot of war crimes, accused of many, many war crimes. Now, Charles Taylor was the head of the national, the NPFL, national, what's it called? The national, it's on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, the NPFL, National
Public Politics.
Anyway, it'll come back to me in a few minutes. Anyway, he was also involved with arming rebels in Sierra Leone during their civil war. Just a brutal dictator, and involved with a lot of child trafficking, terrible crimes against kids, harvesting of organs. So that politicians and other elites could, and I'm talking about politicians and elites within those countries, would consume the organs in these rituals, thinking that it would help them get elected because of their superstitions, and witch doctors also using that. And here's Dr. what's his name? Alan White talking about exactly this, also testifying before a congressional committee.
Well, over 14-year Liberia Civil War from 1989 to 2003, there were so many cases of gunmen, some of them child soldiers, eating their victims' hearts and other body parts, so much so that Catholic Church issued a formal denunciation of these practices, which was documented in the published book from Stephen Ellis, The Mask of Anarchy. It is well documented that during the civil wars in Liberia that ritual killings were commonplace, and one of the most notorious rebels engaged in such horrific acts, his name was Milton Blahyi, also known as General Butt Naked, a feared rebel commander who fought in the Liberian Civil War. He testified before the Liberian Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where I publicly ate children's hearts, and admitted to taking part in human sacrifices as traditional ceremonies intended to ensure victory in battle.
So Bill Horace immigrates from Liberia to Canada. He's living in Canada. How he got to this country, he's a commander in the NPFL military and was involved in massacres and all kinds of other horrific war crimes, according to witnesses. Never convicted, however, on these charges. I should add that. But here he is living in Canada. Many efforts made to deport him, to get him out of the country. But once he was in the system, he used the system and kept appealing and appealing and appealing, and was never made to leave. Even though he was ordered to leave Canada, never actually left. So he's living up in London, about an hour from where I live now, in my hometown. He was murdered by a young guy by the name of Kieran Gregory. This guy here, 22 years old. This is, so he's murdered in kind of a, people wondered if it was related to what his activities were when he was back in Liberia, and these massacres and the child trafficking and the organ consumption and all of these things. But police said, well, maybe not. It was maybe related to some fraud and some illegal activities that he was involved with here in Canada. Regardless, Kieran Gregory sentenced to 10 years in prison for manslaughter. There were actually 4 people involved in the killing. But it just shows that here's this guy who is this horrific, essentially war criminal, and he's allowed to come into the country. And a lot of people wondering, why didn't Canada do something more to get this guy deported, get him out of the country? And because he lingers here for so long, it just explodes into this even bigger problem where now we have a home invasion. He ends up being beaten with a baseball bat and then shot. And then it was exactly a year ago this month that the sentence was passed on Kieran Gregory, who at the time was like 22 years old. The other twist in this whole thing is that Kieran Gregory's father, this is strange, his father, a veteran police officer in Toronto Police Service, proven, gave Kieran Gregory the address of Bill Horace, the war criminal. This guy gave him the home address so that his son could go there and commit this crime. To commit the murder because he was caught up, I guess, in this other illegal activity that Bill Horace was involved with. It just shows that it starts over there and then it comes over here, and now we've got more of these problems here, and we're seeing all of this manifest itself in Canada even, and I think in the United States and other countries. It just spreads out all over the world. Isn't this just a tragedy?
Definitely it is. It is. And, I believe when something small is left unpunished, it will cause more and more crimes, and it will lead to more and more drama that we just saw as an example of yours.
Yeah, and Mira, I mean, I take my hat off to you for going to defend these children, because in places like Uganda and Liberia, in Africa, you have these diamond mines. It's that they call them blood diamonds, and often child labor is used there. You see children who are in the most vulnerable positions when they're orphaned in war zones. They become, targets for predators, and they can be abducted and whisked away to other countries, and sometimes with no trace. And who's ever going to stick up for them?
It's difficult because parents usually in this situation unfortunately cannot think clear, because all what they want is just to get their children in a safe place. And when there is a shelling happening, and shooting, they are acting out of fear, and that's why they believe everyone they would see, with something on their arm saying that it's a volunteer. When someone tells you, like, I will take your child to the safe place, you don't even think, you just let your child go, because you want him or her to remain alive. And that's unfortunately doesn't always happen, because you don't know who you give your children to and where they're going to end up at. So we try to warn families about these issues. They are cautious very much right now. They don't trust that easily, and they know what to do and how to act. But you can't warn everyone, and the warning works, unfortunately, only after a bad situation already happened. When they see the real example, then, they would start listening. Until something happens, people think it's not going to happen to them. It's just the way how humans are.
Yeah. And, I see that, sometimes these children, even in African countries, are abducted and then brought to even to the West now. In fact, there was a thing, I took the liberty of trying to do a little research, and I went and I found a post that you shared on your Twitter account of a BBC report. Are you familiar with the one I'm talking about?
Remind me, please.
Yeah. So this was, what's the name of the guy, the reporter? I believe it's Chris Rogers, who is a prominent British journalist, and he's done a lot of work over his career in this area of child exploitation, child trafficking for various purposes. And then there was this post that was shared on, well, a website, and then I think you reshared it. It just led me back to him, and I was sort of familiar with his work. Here, I'll bring up the article that it links to. There was actually a video. I have to say, though, that the post was somewhat misleading. Not that it was your doing, but the person who posted it, I think, was a little bit, maybe didn't give full context. African children trafficked to UK for blood rituals. So, I mean, that's very concerning, obviously, and I see so much talk about that these days over here in the West, especially since the release of movies like Sound of Freedom, and we see concerns about, just last night we were talking about, the pride parades and allegations of grooming and things like that. So that's top of mind for a lot of people, big concerns about pedophilia and worries about those sorts of things. This particular article, a lot of truth in there. But it was a little misleading, I think, the way that it was portrayed, because it said that the children are being, well, what did it say? Trafficked to UK for blood rituals. And then there was a clip from the documentary that was done. But I have to say, are you familiar with what I'm talking about now?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to comment on that and bringing these kids to the UK?
I want to comment on something else.
Sure.
There is the case that I worked on about African children, because you brought the Pride Parade up, and I remembered about it. I know that in Canada it's allowed, but I'm trying to show this situation from the perspective of the African man. So the man is from Kenya, and the case is happening in Germany. And he has 5 children and only one son, the oldest son. The children, like 3 of the children, were taken away from him. 2 children they were able to save. His wife took them to a different country, and while he was fighting for his children to bring them back home, his oldest son gender was changed. And there is no way that the 14-year-old boy wanted that African boy, Kenyan boy, wanted that change. How does it feel for the father who has the only son? How big of the shame it is? how big of the drama it is for, like, for the whole generation. It's terrible. And when things like this happen, against of someone's will, just to show what, just to prove what, just why would you want to hurt that much? And by the way, it was the chemical way of changing gender, so there is
Hormone
no,
replacement therapy.
yeah,
Hmm.
yes, so there is no way of turning him back to the guy.
Yeah.
And things like this, they are absolutely horrific. It seems that the world is upside down, and
It
it's
is
not.
upside down, and it's a terrible situation. But there is good and there is bad. There in everywhere that I look. I mean, I see the darkness and the light. And even in this case, with this article from the BBC, from that post, there's the headline. But what the post on social media failed to zero in on was what is actually written in the article. The headline's horrific, but the goodness in it is that it says that the 400 kids that are identified, specifically in that report, were rescued by British authorities. So that's the upside. Not to say that there wasn't damage done, but the kids were rescued by the British authorities. So see, there are some good people still out there, and I can tell you too that, and I mean, just get you to comment on that, I guess, before I keep on blabbing.
Well, there is groups on social media where they actually post on a daily basis, not only the crimes on human trafficking, but also about saved children and what was done and how it was done and all the operations, which is good. But again, the amount of saved children, unfortunately, is comparing to how many children are missing, is so low. And it's just sad. And I totally agree with you. There are always good people and bad people. Like you mentioned twice that I probably don't like Ukrainian government or American government. I've not that. I can't have any feelings to something that has no soul. I experience feelings only to human beings. And but talking in general, you are completely right. There are good people and bad people, and every time we do some work, we are hoping that good people hear that and support it, because how much can we do? All what we can do is just bring awareness to the issues. We were able last year to create the International Association to Combat Children Trafficking. We have in there people, just public activists and journalists again, and people who work with such issue from different countries, who gather together in order to exchange information about what is happening. And in some countries, for example, it's very difficult to approach the government with some request, but if it's a local organization, it's easier for them to approach that organization. So this group of people united for that purposes, and it's working. It's good, but you're right. There is always light in the darkness. The world is not completely dark. There are good people, thank God, and hopefully there will be more good people than bad people.
Well, the work is so important because it is a problem, and it is global. It is in every country. There's no question that we do here in Canada, I'm sure in the United States, in every country around the world, you have sexual predators. And it's been that way probably forever. You're never going to stamp it out because I would say it's a form of mental illness in a lot of ways. And so, I mean, that's why the work that you're doing is so important. But it's also important to make sure that we proceed from a place of truth and with accuracy in the information that we use to combat these things. Because if we don't, then if we don't start from an accurate place, then we can't focus the efforts in a proper way to get a proper outcome. Wouldn't you agree?
Indeed.
Yes. So, again, I applaud the work that you're doing. Is there anything else you'd like to add tonight or think that I might be missing?
No, I think we have spoke and covered many tasks, and for tonight should be enough. Uh, just cut out whatever you feel like cutting out.
I'll run the whole thing. This is
It's like
unedited, so
over an hour and 20 minutes.
yeah, I know our program goes for like 2-3 hours a night. So
okay.
we're long form journalism, and I don't like to edit out too much because I want to make sure that everything is offered up in full context whenever possible. I'm just, I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. I'm grateful for the way you're sticking up for free speech, for journalists internationally, for children who really do need our protection, especially the most vulnerable people, our children in places like war zones, orphans who have nobody to advocate for them at all. They need someone like you.
Prisoners, unfortunately, that category of people who are vulnerable. Maybe outside they were not that, but they ended up in the circumstances where nobody can hear them. Absolutely. And sometimes they don't even have anybody to reach out to get help. And I explained to you about the situation with the local human rights defenders who are completely under the control. They're not independent. And sometimes it ends for the prisoner even worse after they ask for the help than it was before, because then the revenge is coming. So yes, we are everywhere with everyone who needs help and support, and we will do our best. I can't give any promises to people, but at least I'm trying to do all what's in my power and more.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you had such a terrible experience with the justice system, and
I'm not the only one.
time.
Look at your favorite statistics. What's happening in the United States? Like every single person was incarcerated, arrested, was in jail.
You're talking about the J6 thing, the January 6th thing. Is that what you're talking about?
Not
or
only
is that something else?
Not only that, it's a separate topic, but I'm talking about people who get arrested even for like something small, like some administrative violation, and like they get arrested and they get bailed out or released or charges get dropped. But like every single person who is like, reached a certain age, they'd been to American jail. And like, what's the conviction rate? And they would tell you straight like, oh, our conviction rate in Virginia state is 99.9%. We are not going to drop it because of your case. So sign this plea or you will go to prison for 60 years, And it works. Unfortunately, it does work for many people, this fear, but it shouldn't be like that. And that's my main goal and call to people. Like, this is something that must be changed because this is wrong. People have to have a free will. They are restricted, but their liberty is restricted. They cannot leave the prison or jail. But like nobody can restrict their food or medical. Like nobody can decide like how much medical help you're going to get. Are you going to get your pain medication today or not? Nobody can restrict your communication with the family. Nobody can restrict what you're saying or what you're thinking, especially because when someone is controlling your the way of your thinking, not letting you think freely, and it's again going back to propaganda and stuff like this. This is already a true mental rape, something more serious, than we actually can imagine on a physical level, because that's already dealing with the consciousness, subconsciousness, superconsciousness, and so on. So it's a very serious violation on a completely different level.
Well, as a journalist, I'm all about making sure that people can think with accurate information. I really don't like it when I see propaganda. I don't like it, and so I'm always trying to proceed from a place of truth from people. I've made a pledge to our viewers that I would never lie to them, and to the best of my knowledge, I never have. I'm not saying I'm perfect and don't make mistakes, but I certainly am always. That's what we're all about here: is trying to get people to to truth, to get closer to the truth. And that means providing balance and providing people with a variety of opinions and views to share their voice with us here on the Maverick News platform. And I'm so grateful to you tonight for doing just that, because your voice is very important internationally, and you're doing very important work. So I really do appreciate everything that you're doing and for spending the time with us here this evening. Is there anything else you'd like to add or think that I might have been missing this evening? Because we're long form and I'll give you as much time as you would like.
I just would like to say to our audience that I wish them to keep up their courage, to keep their hope, faith, and love to the human beings. It's very important to have mercy and love, and don't believe everything what you hear and what you've been told. It's important to check information. 3 mouse clicks, 3 different sources. Critical mind will save in such a difficult, information confrontation times when, you face so much mind games and manipulations. And all the best, of course. And thank you so much for your platform and letting me speak tonight. And it's such a pleasure, Rick. Thank you for what that you're doing.
I look forward to having you back on the program again. Thank you so much, Mira.
Thank you.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And it seems, just in closing tonight, that the consensus out there is that Justin Trudeau's father does indeed come from Cuba. Just ask Donald Trump, who said this in that interview that we told you about on the Aiden Ross live.
He's turned very liberal, actually. They say
One
he's
more time.
the son of Fidel Castro, and could be. I mean, anything's possible in this world,
Poor Justin. But hey, when you're in a position of power like that, and you're a politician, it just comes with the territory. Folks, I will be back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with more information to help get you closer to the truth. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.